Boyfriend and I had been together for 6 years, work our day jobs together, and also run a side business together. He's my best friend, and despite managing to get past and through a lot together, he hasn't proposed. His family is starting to pressure us to get married, but he said he hasn't decided yet. He has said that he wants to get married and have a ton of kids, so what he means is, he hasn't decided if he wants to marry me. My ego is a little hurt. What else does he need to know that he hasn't already learned in almost 7 years? Is indecision the same thing as a decision in this case? We both started therapy separately very recently to work through some trauma and cope with anxiety. I don't know if I should wait to see if he'll come to some kind of epiphany in therapy, or if I should leave and save the decision for him. I love him a lot, and for a long time I saw a future with him. But recently I'm starting to accept signs that he just doesn't love me as much as I love him. How do I know if he loves me or if he just doesn't want to be alone? We don't live together, we won't live together until we are married. He has stayed over for extended periods of time, so we're mostly familiar with each other's habits. We are from different cultures, but I still come from a traditional family, so we have a lot of the same values. I just consider myself to be more independent. I am very uncomfortable with the idea of an ultimatum. I don't like the idea of forcing someone to make a decision out of fear or because they're backed into a corner. My communication skills are something that I'm pretty proud of, to be honest, but it's something that he struggles with. And that's one thing he wants to work on in therapy. I'm working on not projecting my fears of insecurity onto our relationship, even when he isn't communicating properly. He picked me up and I told him that after the conversation with his family, I've been feeling really insecure in our relationship. And if he's unsure if he wants to marry me, I need to know what he's unsure about. I said if we want to have kids, I really can't wait forever. He says that he is sure he wants to marry me, and he might have had a plan to propose. But when I came over, his family completely blindsided him, and now it's awkward, like they've spoiled it. I told him maybe he needs to think about if what we have is what he wants. I just feel it shouldn't be this complicated. Maybe I'm just jaded and bitter at this point and nothing will make me happy. I do believe him, he wouldn't drag me along just for the fun of it. I love him, and our lives are so wrapped up, it's very hard to leave, even if I wanted to. I just wish I could read his mind. I wanted to talk to my therapist before I made any decisions. We both had appointments the following day, and in my session she asked me if I thought I was ready for marriage. I said of course, I've known I wanted to marry him since I asked him to move out with me. 2 years into the relationship and he turned me down. She responded by rephrasing the question. She said she isn't asking if I want to marry him, but rather, is the way I currently feel about myself. The way I handle my problems and my anxiety, and the way my boyfriend and I communicate. Is the way I feel in my relationship the way I want the rest of my life with this man to be? No way came out of my mouth way before I even processed it. Stressed was in my brain in big, bold, yellow letters. Right now I need to continue to work on my issues in therapy and learn what the best version of myself is like before I'm ready to commit to whatever future version of our lives together looks like. I've only been going for 2 months so far, and I've already seen a huge improvement in my ability to handle stress and my self-worth. I purchased a 3-bedroom condo in Toronto, Canada 5 years ago when I was in my 2nd year of medical residency. Soon after the purchase, I rented one of the rooms to my roommate to offset the costs of the mortgage. I live in one room, she lives in the second, and the third is my study / office. She has been a great roommate from the beginning. We aren't necessarily friends, as in we don't do things together for fun, but we get along exceptionally well. The entire roommate / tenant relationship has gone swimmingly up until recently. A couple of weeks ago, my roommate broke the news to me that she is pregnant. The father was a fling of hers, who does not want anything to do with the child. My roommate has decided she wants to keep the child anyways, and raise it on her own. To me that seems like a huge challenge, and I admire her for it. The issue is, while I don't necessarily dislike children, I have no desire to live with a baby. While the condo is a fair size, I will most definitely be woken up by the babies crying at night. My condo is also where I like to come home to and relax, like a haven after a long workday. And the idea of coming home to a baby honestly seems absolutely chaotic. especially since this isn't my own child, i.e. one that my girlfriend and I decided to have / was mentally prepared for. As difficult as it was for me to do this, I told her essentially what I've written here. And that it would be best if she finds somewhere else to live. I am not rushing her out or anything like that. I have given her 6 months' notice. Since any later than that will come too close to the birth. She was honestly quite taken aback by this, and thought that I was being cruel. Her primary concern is that rent has gone up substantially in this city since she signed on with me. I haven't increased her rent since she moved in, so she's essentially paying 2015 rent. She works as a waitress, and will likely need to find a lesser apartment to keep within the same budget. A couple of other considerations are that she was out of work while restaurants were closed. But I did waive her rent for that period. All of the furniture is also mine, aside from her bedroom, so she would need to figure something out on that front as well. Aside from all of the child expenses. I understand her position, and I feel horrible about the situation, but I honestly can't do it. I haven't been able to give life much thought lately, as work has been quite busy. Firstly, I have a friend in real estate, and I'm going to see if they can help her try to find some affordable listings. Secondly, as I don't plan to take on another tenant after her, and can afford to do this anyway, I have decided I'm going to waive her rent for the remainder of the tenancy. This will hopefully give her a bit of a boost to get on her feet. I consulted an attorney to be 1000% sure, and this is perfectly legal. Since I live in the unit, the eviction laws are much more lenient. Her baby will become a toddler, and a toddler eventually becomes a school-age child. Will it really be any better to do this later on? When I came home from work today, I told her that I wanted to discuss the overall situation. Before I even began, she actually apologized to me for how she spoke to me, and for expecting that I would be okay for her to raise her child here. I told her that her apology is totally unnecessary, as her reaction was completely understandable considering the uncertainty of her future. I then told her that I would waive her rent for the REMA. My boyfriend and I have been together about a year, and when our city implemented lockdown for the virus, he decided to quarantine with me at my apartment as I live alone and have a nicer apartment, and he has several roommates. Mostly it has been going well, and thankfully we both still have jobs. Except in the first few weeks I started noticing that the bathroom floor was suddenly always wet around the toilet. The sink is across the room from the toilet, so it's unlikely to be from the sink. At first I thought it might be water, but soon realized that it was definitely pee. I asked boyfriend about it nicely, and he apologized and said sometimes he has bad aim. I asked him to try a little harder, and he said sure. The floor continued to be frequently spattered with piss. And a few weeks later I confronted him about it again because I think it's pretty gross to step in his pee several times a week. And it seems like an easy thing to fix. If he misses the toilet, I think the very least he could do is make sure to wipe it up with toilet paper or a Clorox wipe. The cleaning supplies even live in a cabinet directly over the toilet. He said sure, sorry, he would try to remember to do that. Another week has passed, and while maybe he's doing this sometimes, I've continued to step in splatters of his pee and wipe it off the floor and clean the floor several times a week. I thought about asking him to just pee into the bathtub or something instead, because I don't understand how you can pee on the floor by accident so often and not notice and not clean it up. Last night I got up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and absolutely stepped in piss, for the 12,312,301,298th time. I had it, and I didn't want to pick a fight or ask him again since it seems clear he can't or won't change. So I got one of my dog's wee pads from when he was a puppy, he is well trained now, and cut it up a bit and taped it down to make a sort of skirt or mat around the floor near the toilet to at least absorb the piss. Boyfriend saw this morning and is furious with me, saying that I'm calling him a dog, comparing him to an animal, etc. Honestly, I was not thinking that at all. I just was trying to be resourceful and solve the problem for myself since I don't like piss on my bathroom floor, and don't like stepping in it. I didn't feel like arguing about it anymore. And putting a material specifically meant to absorb pee around the area he keeps peeing on by accident seemed like a practical solution. I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members were are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to still have the wedding on date when my wife was 5 months in. My family were furious when they found out my wife was pregnant. They asked if we even still considered having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially mom and dad, who said they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values, and weren't willing to let this stain their reputation. As in my wife and I getting married while pregnant. They officially dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying it was done and I have only myself to blame for this outcome, and should move the wedding out of town. I was hurt. I tried to change their minds and checked with other members, but my brother said he had no intentions to look like a joke in front of his fellow church members and dropped out. My aunt pretended to be sick and said she may not be able to make it. She's 100% healthy. My cousin said he had business trip and stopped his wife and kids from attending, and my uncle cussed me out, torn the invitation, and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and share my joy at my wedding. I even broke down crying after the ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and then got busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He sat with me on behalf of the family, saying I shouldn't have returned gifts that were from my family who want to see and hopefully be involved in my daughter's life. He said Mom's longing to meet her grandbaby and everyone else is wanting to visit soon to celebrate my daughter's life. I asked him this question. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason why the entire lot of them abandoned my wedding? He just stared grudgingly as I went on about how they treated my daughter as something to be ashamed of and hide. My daughter at some point will ask about the wedding, and I have no intentions on lying to her. He replied saying he guaranteed I got it all wrong, and no matter what goes down between us I can never deny that my daughter is their granddaughter, //niece //etc., and they're her family. He asked that I arrange for them to visit, but I refused. He kept pressing the idea, but I shut him down. My wife says I should let them come, but I still refused.